Welcome to this deep dive, tailored just for you. We've been looking through a whole stack of articles, reports, all focused on Google's recent announcements.
Yeah, and what they might mean, especially for things like, your Pixel phone.
Exactly. So we're digging into Google I/O 2025. That was May 20th, 21st at Shoreline Amphitheater.
That's right. And actually, some key details dropped even before that. During an Android broadcast, I think it was May 13th.
Right. Okay, so let's try and unpack this. The goal here is to pull out the really important bits, understand what Google actually announced, and maybe why it matters for their whole ecosystem. Software, hardware, the lot.
Definitely. And just for context, Google I/O, it started as a developer conference, right? But now it's much bigger.
Yeah, it's where they show off the big picture stuff. Android, AI, Wear OS, TV, even cars. It sets the stage for what you see as a consumer later in the year.
And this year, wow, there was a lot. Big updates for Android 16. We saw more on Android XR. AI was just everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah, and Google Beam, that used to be Project Starline. Plus, specific updates for Wear OS, Android TV, Android Auto.
And interestingly, what wasn't really talked about much, at least directly at I/O, was Pixel hardware, which, according to the sources, is kind of a big deal right now.
A really big deal. Okay, so let's start with the software side. Android 16, that May 13th broadcast kicked things off.
I did. The big visual change confirmed there was this new design language, Material 3 Expressive.
Expressive, what does that actually mean?
Well, think of it as building on Material U, but aiming for interfaces that feel maybe a bit more distinct, more personality, more dynamic movement. Sort of quirky, almost.
Okay, interesting. And beyond the visuals, any practical features?
Yeah, they talked about things like iOS-style live updates. So imagine getting, like, package tracking or live sports scores right on your lock screen, prominently.
Oh, okay, without opening the app constantly. I like that.
Exactly. And a revamp for the quick settings menu, too.
Security was also mentioned, right?
Big time. Factory reset protection, make it harder for thieves to just wipe and sell your phone. And something called advanced protection mode for people needing, like, extra high security.
Got it. And they actually gave a date for the stable release.
It did. Confirmed for a June launch date. And the sources also noted Samsung is aiming for a similar summer window for their version.
Okay, June. But then at I/O itself, they did something a bit different, launched a beta.
Yeah, the first beta for Android 16 QPR1. Quarterly platform release 1. Usually, these betas come after the main release.
So QPR1 is like the features coming later in the year, maybe the first feature drop.
Pretty much. And launching the beta early gives devs and, keen users a sneak peek.
What did that beta actually show? Anything noticeable?
A few things. An improved lock screen clock, but the one people jumped on was more space on the home screen.
Oh, finally. Is that about the at-a-glance widget?
That's the one. Pixel users have complained about the huge unremovable widget for ages. This beta, according to the sources, shrinks it down to the Pixel launcher.
Does it really? How much smaller?
Enough to free up a whole extra row on your home screen for icons or other widgets.
Okay, that's significant. It's not letting you remove it, but smaller is definitely a good compromise. Addresses that feedback.
Yeah, and sources also said it's smaller on the lock screen, too, in this beta. Which makes sense because Android 16 QPR1 is confirmed to support other lock screen widgets. You'd need the space.
Right. Need room for those. Anything else on Android 16 from I/O?
They mentioned building out the desktop mode more and explicitly said it's using Samsung's DeX as a foundation.
DeX. That's Samsung's thing for plugging your phone into a monitor, right? Like a desktop.
Exactly. So it suggests Google's getting serious about making Android work better on bigger screens, maybe with better multi-window support.
Okay, interesting. Let's shift to wearables. Wear OS 6.
Yep. Developer preview dropped at I/O, building on details from that May 13th show.
What's new there? Besides the usual bug fixes, I assume.
Two main things highlighted. First, it's also getting that Material 3 expressive design, so it matches Android 16 visually.
Consistency, okay.
And second, and this is probably more important day-to-day, better battery life. Up a 10% improvement, the sources mentioned.
10%. On a watch, that could actually mean, what, a few extra hours maybe?
Could be. And that's often the biggest complaint with smartwatches, right? Battery life.
Definitely. When can we expect Wear OS 6?
The official word is coming months, likely timed around Samsung's next Galaxy Watch launch, which usually happens late summer.
Okay. And developers, any specific mentions?
Yeah, they confirmed Facer, the popular watch face platform, is coming back or will support the update.
Good to know. All right, how about the living room, Android TV?
Android 16 for TV. confirmed as the next version, sticking to that 2-year cycle they seem to be on.
Any big user-facing changes there?
Not so much yet, based on the sources. The emulator is out for developers, and the new stuff is mostly under the hood. New APIs for things like dynamically switching picture and audio profiles based on the content.
So your TV settings could adjust automatically for movies versus sports, maybe?
Potentially, yeah, apps use the APIs. And support for a new audio format, Eclipse Audio. But visually, the sources showed a comparison, and it doesn't look like Material 3 Expressive has hit Android TV yet. Minor tweaks only.
Okay. So phone and watch, get the new look. TV maybe later. What about Android in the car?
Updates there too, relevant for both Android Auto, the one running off your phone, and Google Built-in, where Android runs natively in the car.
What's coming to Android Auto?
Browser support and video app support later this year, so you could like watch YouTube or browse the web while parked.
While parked. Key point there.
Definitely. And for cars with Google Built-in, they're getting an audio-only mode for video apps. Think listening to YouTube videos, like podcasts, while you're driving.
Makes sense for safety.
And one quieter reveal, but kind of cool, Quick Share is coming to Google Built-in cars.
Quick share, like sending files easily.
Yeah, offline sharing between your phone and the car. Good for maybe sending map data or photos, media files. No timeline given on that one, though.
Still handy. Okay, that covers the core OS updates. Let's pivot to the more future-forward stuff, XR and AI.
Right. Android XR first. Google's been teasing this mixed reality platform for a bit. We saw UI glimpses before, demos of Gemini helping out.
Project Astra, right? Like identifying things through prototype smart glasses.
Exactly. That was back in April. At I/O, they gave a closer look at how Gemini integrates more deeply. And importantly, confirmed hardware partners.
Who's making the hardware?
Well, XREal is making specific Project Aura smart glasses just for developers to start building on the platform. And Samsung and Google are working together on a reference hardware design.
A reference design, so like a template for other companies?
Kind of, yeah. Guiding future devices. And it's worth remembering Samsung's own headset, Project Mohan, wasn't shown at I/O, but is still expected later. Seems like Google's building the software foundation, partners build the consumer gear.
Got it. Okay. Now for the elephant in the room, AI.
The elephant. Yeah, the sheer volume of AI announcements was overwhelming. Gemini felt like it was being woven into absolutely everything.
It really did. Any big new plans or tools?
Well, they introduced a Gemini AI Ultra plan, but the price tag, sources reported $3,000 a year.
Oof. Okay, so that's definitely enterprise or pro level.
For sure. And some of the really high-end creative tools need that Ultra or the Pro plan, like Google Flow, this new AI filmmaking tool.
Filmmaking, how does that work?
It uses their latest video generator, VO3. And the impressive part, sources noted, is VO3 can now generate audio to go with video. So more complete AI creations.
Wow, okay. Images, too.
Yeah, improvements to Imagen 4. They claimed it's better at spelling text within images now and rendering tricky things like fur or water droplets realistically.
What about the thinking side of AI, reasoning?
They unveiled Gemini 2.5 Pro Deep Think. Sounds powerful. The description suggested it can explore multiple solutions or hypotheses for a problem.
So good for complex stuff.
Exactly. Sources highlighted coding or advanced math problems as potential strengths.
And how is this all changing search? That seemed like a big focus.
Huge. They're broadly rolling out AI mode in search, with those AI overviews summarizing results.
Yeah.
But also adding things like deep search for more complex topics and integrating Project Astra, so maybe asking search about something your camera sees.
Search using your camera.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And even automation, like AI automatically buying something for you if the price drops below a certain point.
Whoa, okay. That's a step. What about automating browser tasks? Project Mariner.
Mariner's got upgrades too. Supposedly handles more tasks at once now and more complex sequences. Could be really useful for like heavy research or comparison shopping.
Yeah, I can see that. What about productivity? Gmail, calendar.
Gmail's getting a Gemini-powered inbox cleanup feature. Could be a lifesaver.
Tell me about it.
And also, managing your calendar from Gmail using Gemini. Creating, editing, deleting events just by asking. Plus, smart replies.
Smarter how?
They're designed to match your writing style, your tone, and even pull context from past emails or Google Drive files. So, not just generic replies.
That sounds genuinely useful, actually. Meetings.
Google Meet gets near real-time speech translation, though that needs an AI Pro or Ultra plan.
Ah, the subscription again. Okay.
And Notebook LM, their research tool, gets video overviews and customizable lengths for audio overviews, just making it easier to digest info.
Anything fun.
Well, there's an Androidify app to turn your photo into an Android bot. But sources said you have to compile it yourself, so maybe more for devs right now. And Gemini can create interactive quizzes.
Huh, okay. And Gemini's coming to watches, cars, TVs too, right? That was confirmed.
Yep, confirmed on that May 13th show. AI everywhere is definitely the message.
Clearly. Okay, one more piece of future tech, Google Beam. That name sounds familiar but different.
It is. Google Beam is the new official name for Project Starline.
Ah, the 3D video calling booth thing. The glasses-free one.
That's the one. And the big news is they're partnering with HP to actually launch the first Beam devices later this year.
Launching. For consumers.
Well, they said select customers, so maybe a cautious rollout first. But they're working with partners like Zoom and others to bring it to businesses worldwide and developing speech translation for it too.
Okay, so Starline is becoming Beam, and it's actually getting closer to reality, starting with businesses maybe?
Seems like it.
All right. So, huge amount of news on software, AI, future platforms, but Pixel hardware. You mentioned the silence at I.O.
Yeah. The Pixel 8a launched back in March, well before I.O.
And unlike 2022, when they teased the Pixel 7 months early at I.O.
No Pixel 10 tease this year, nope.
So what's the story there? The sources seem to think this was really important.
It shifts the focus entirely onto the chip inside the Pixel phone's Tensor. The sources frame this as a truly critical moment for Pixel, all because of Tensor.
Okay, let's talk Tensor. So it's the first one in the Pixel 6. The reviews have been mixed, right?
Mixed is putting it mildly sometimes. There have been persistent complaints, really, across G1, G2, G3, and even reports about the G4 and the Pixel 9.
What are the main complaints?
Generally, it comes down to lacking the raw performance of competitors like Qualcomm or MediaTek's top chips. Issues with heat, so the phone gets hot and throttles performance, and often disappointing battery life compared to rivals.
And the sources point fingers at manufacturing.
Overwhelmingly, yes. The reports consistently suggest the issues stem, at least in large part, from Google using Samsung Foundry to make the chips.
Why is that such a big deal? Samsung makes lots of chips.
They do, but in the super high-end semiconductor world, they're generally seen as lagging behind the leader, TSMC, in terms of process technology and yields. Tiny differences in manufacturing can have huge effects on chip performance and how much power it uses.
Okay, Samsung Foundry seen as maybe not the absolute best choice, so what's the big news?
This is the potential game changer. The sources strongly report that Google is switching manufacturers. They claim Google is moving to TSMC, the industry leader, to make the Tensor G5 chip.
G5, so that would be for the Pixel 10 next year.
Exactly. And the report suggests it's not just for 1 year. Google might be sticking with TSMC for up to 5 years, potentially through the Pixel 14.
Wow. Okay, that is a massive shift. Does it really make that much difference just changing who makes the chip?
The sources argue, yes, potentially a huge difference. They use a great example. Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, made by Samsung, had heat and efficiency issues.
I remember that chip getting criticized.
Right. Then Qualcomm released the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. Very similar design, but made by TSMC. The difference. Reports claimed around a 10% performance boost, and crucially, about 30% better power efficiency.
Just from switching to TSMC.
Largely, yes. Just the foundry change. So, apply that thinking to Tensor G5. You've got a new generation of chip design from Google, plus it's being made by TSMC. The potential for a significant leap is definitely there.
This sounds like make or break for Tensor then.
That's exactly how the sources frame it. A big bet. A critical moment.
What's the best case scenario here?
Tensor G5 is great. Performs well, stays cool, sips battery. It finally puts Pixel chips on par with the competition, removing that major hardware complaint. Sources talk about it potentially kicking off the best phase of Google Pixel phones yet, a grand new chapter.
Okay, that sounds promising, but there's always a but, isn't there?
There is. The sources raise a crucial question. What if the problem isn't just Samsung's manufacturing? What if Google's own chip designs have fundamental flaws or limitations?
Ah, so even TSMC's Magic Touch wouldn't fix a flawed design.
Exactly. If the core design is the issue, switching foundries won't solve everything. You might get improvements, but maybe not enough to catch up.
So the sources see this TSMC switch as Google's last big chance on this.
Pretty much. They call it Google's last opportunity to fix things with a major foundry change. If a TSMC-made Tensor G5 still underwhelms, where does Google go next? There isn't another TSMC-level option easily available.
Right. It feels very binary.
That's the sense you get. The sources stress there's no real middle ground. Either G5 on TSMC works and Tensor finally gets on track, letting Pixel compete fully on hardware and software,
Right.
or the chip issues persist and Google keeps having this Achilles heel, maybe even forcing them to rethink the whole custom silicon strategy down the road.
The stakes feel incredibly high for the Pixel brand's future.
They really do.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. Looking at the sources, Google I/O and the lead-up showed huge strides. Android is evolving visually, functionally. Updates across the ecosystem, watches, TVs, cars, AI is just exploding across every service. And future tech like Beam and XR is moving forward.
Definitely a lot of software and platform momentum,
Yeah.
but casting a shadow or maybe a spotlight over all of it is this Pixel hardware situation, specifically the Tensor chip and this massive reported switch to TSMC manufacturing.
It really underscores that while the software vision is ambitious, the hardware execution, particularly the core chip, has been the sticking point. This TSMC move feels like their big play to fix that.
And success there is still a big question mark. It's the critical unknown for the hardware's future.
So the provocative thought these sources leave us with for you to consider is really centered on that chip. Will switching to TSMC be the silver bullet? Will it finally let Tensor shine and elevate Pixel to compete head-to-head with the absolute best phones out there?
Or are the challenges perhaps deeper in the design itself, meaning even this much-anticipated manufacturing shift might not deliver the lead everyone hopes for? It really feels like a pivot point.
A major pivot point. We'll definitely be watching closely to see how Tensor G5 and the Pixel 10 turn out. Feels like a lot is riding on it.